Welcome to the Retail Insider video series. I'm your host today, Craig Patterson, and we're joined here with a special guest. This is Martin Moriarty. You're a senior vice president at Marcus Millichap based in Vancouver. Is that correct, Martin?
That is correct. Thanks for having me, Craig.
I've got it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about Nordstrom. For those listening or watching here now, it's no surprise that Nordstrom has been announced that it's going to be leaving the Canadian market, closing all of its stores, which includes the large full-price Nordstrom stores, which there's 6 in Canada, as well as the 7 off-price Nordstrom Rack locations. So I wanted to bring Martin in here today to talk a little bit about what can be done with the space. We're going to talk specifically about downtown Vancouver here because, Martin, that's your specialty. You and Mario Negrith at Marcus and Millichap do all kinds of deals, lease deals in downtown Vancouver around retail. Now, Martin, let's talk a little bit about that Nordstrom box. And first, let's just talk about Nordstrom quickly. Were you surprised that Nordstrom made this announcement that it's pulling out of the Canadian market?
Yeah, I think it was surprising. I think it took a lot of people by shock, and your reporting of it was great. So we appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, from a local standpoint, we anecdotally, we'd been in that store. It always seemed very busy. I had heard the sales were very strong. I'd heard at one point it was at least in the top 5 in terms of the chain, nationally and internationally, including the US. So yeah, it was surprising. And I think you walk through the store often enough, and you see enough. You see the bags going around town. You see the concessions busy. It took us by surprise, but we know that retail is often does take you by surprise, and retail is obviously national. So I'm not sure if there was more to this than obviously a cross Canada issue. But yeah, from a Vancouver standpoint, it was surprising. I think the store was performing well, and we had seen an awful lot of interest in Vancouver in the leasing market over the past 6 to 12 months. So yeah, this was a bit of a different news take for us.
Absolutely. I can confirm actually that at various times, I'm not sure about right now, but that Vancouver store was literally the top Nordstrom location in the company. So, and I can confirm this because I
didn't surprise me. Yeah, like and that is the shocking part. I think that the fact that it must have been a very tough decision to exit the entirety of the country with such a high performing store as that.
Absolutely. The other stores weren't doing as well. I know when I found out a few weeks before the announcement was made, we kept it quiet because Nordstrom is publicly traded and we wanted to make sure we had all of our information correct. But the very first question I asked was, including the Vancouver store, because I was blown away by that. I mean, I knew that the other ones weren't doing as well, but anyways, Vancouver was a superstar. The store is close to Seattle. Vancouverites for decades have had an affinity with Nordstrom, being that the headquarters are in Seattle and the flagship store there is also located in downtown Seattle. The store opened in 2015 in downtown Vancouver. It's beautiful. It's full of designer brands, including some pretty big luxury brands. And it's very, very busy. A friend of mine who's a very well-known retail person, I don't have her permission to say who she is, but she was there yesterday and was texting me saying it felt like Christmas. There were so many people in that store and it was so busy and people were shopping.
Yeah, and it's sad. It's very sad news. It's sad for Canada. I mean, obviously we'll dig in on the Vancouver aspect of that, but to lose such a great retailer, and granted I had only been in a couple of the locations across Canada, but Vancouver it looked nice. It seemed busy, and yeah, it's sad to lose it.
Now that's a big box. So that building was built in the 1970s for Eaton's, and I believe it was I'm trying to remember now. Was it closer to 800,000 square feet? I think it was, but now it's been downsized. Specifically, it became a Sears store for a while. When Nordstrom came in, it took the bottom 3 retail levels. The basement was actually converted back into mall space. So we've got this 230,000 or so square foot box that's sitting there. It might be a little bit less. I know that's the number that Nordstrom gave us formally. It's got 3 corners. You've got Robson Street, you've got Granville Street, you've got a little bit of frontage there also on West Georgia Street. Now let's talk a little bit about what could be done with this Nordstrom store, because I see some incredible opportunities, and I'm sure you do as well, as someone who is very heavily involved with retail leasing in downtown Vancouver.
Totally. It's as much as it's a sad story, and it really is, we'll miss Nordstrom in downtown Vancouver. It's your typical Vancouver story of we struggle to create space. And in my 11 years here, I think it's probably been the most prohibitive issue that we encounter with global retailers, which is, hey, we want to be in Vancouver, but we want X amount of square footage. We have to work really hard to try and create that. We had this with Muji. We've had this with a couple more retailers who are making announcements soon that I can't actually talk about, and I'm sure you'll be reporting about those soon, Craig. But the the reality is, it's just tight. We're geographically constrained, and such is the land value that it's hard to create these retail plazas and malls and spaces. So I think that, as sad as it is, we're left with this incredible opportunity, and it's really a once in a generation opportunity for the ownership. And Cadillac Fairview, incredible landlord, incredible owner operator. They understand retail better than probably anyone else in Canada. They're going to have a great opportunity for them to re-merchandise and essentially restart this space. And this could be, there's so many options. The mind races. It could be one large scale user, which I think is probably unlikely, if I'm honest. I think that for the reasons of Nordstrom and Sears departing, it probably makes more sense to break it up. But then it's how do you break it up? And there are options. You could look at the big boxes coming in and taking spaces. Like we all know, there are large scale, I'll be careful not to say any brands, but there are large scale home furnishing companies. There are large scale grocer-owned food hall users that have been actively looking in the marketplace, as well as many big scale retailers. When we did Muji, it took us a long time to find 18,000 square feet, but that chunk of space that, we need 30,000, 50,000, 70,000, where else do you find it other than here? So they're going to be able to come up with a great program, I'm sure. And whether it's breaking it box by box, piece by piece, creating the frontage onto Robson, Granville, Howe, and Georgia, I think it's really exciting. There's also the prospect of maybe the mall is expanded in some capacity. Maybe there's a way to extend the ground floor presence of the mall such that it's kind of conducive to what Pacific Center is. And Pacific Center has been an incredibly strong performer over a very long period of time. So it wouldn't be surprising if that was the case. But yeah, I'm excited. I think that there's, again, I don't want to discount that it's a sad story, but in Vancouver, we are constrained, and I think we're under retailed, and I think this gives us the space that we kind of needed.
It makes perfect sense. And there could be an animation along Granville Street. And actually, speaking of Granville Street, let's talk about that quickly, because Granville Street's seeing a resurgence in Vancouver. We're seeing some new retailers coming in. We're seeing some new redevelopment proposals. We're even seeing competitor Hudson's Bay going to be redeveloping its building to include an office building on the top, as well as this kind of new concept Hudson's Bay store that they're saying that they're going to build there. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're seeing around Granville Street, its resurgence, and retail leasing in that area?
Yeah, I think Granville's been going through a transitionary period, and Granville runs a long way. So we're talking about just Granville downtown right now. But if you're taking the 400 to the 800, 900 block, the Bonis family, who we work for, they've done some incredible projects on the street. We've seen some great office tenancies turn up there, and I think the mall obviously helps, but the retail on the street, has traditionally done very well. I think during COVID, it was probably impacted more than other streets, just for the fact that it was, really centrally driven, and some of the office tenancies, obviously, the occupancy in the office was decreased over that period in time. But as a whole, we like what we see. We have a lot of interest. The vacancy we do have is self-created. It's either there to allow for renovation, or to allow for relocation, or to allow for redevelopment. But yeah, there's going to be, it's an incredible area for development in downtown Vancouver, because you can't really pick a more arterial street north to south. And I think that with the right strategies in place, and with the support of the city of Vancouver, which is very important with a new change in regime, it can fly.
Oh, that's terrific. That's terrific. Now, I know that not all the office workers have returned to downtown Vancouver, but we're hearing that retail leasing has been very, very strong, I think, throughout the downtown core, which could include Robson Street. We actually went on a tour, you and I, a while ago, and we're looking around, and you were very excited to tell me about all kinds of deals. We won't talk. I don't know all the details anyways, because some are confidential, and you're good with confidentiality, of course. But just as a general conversation, Things are happening on Robson Street. We've got Alberni Street, which is something of a luxury street. We've seen some retail, like a store called Bash, which is going to be, or maybe it's already open, I'm not sure, on West Georgia Street. But there's still retail movement happening there. Louis Vuitton is going to be expanding a bit and renovating as well. And actually, there was just an announcement, I believe, that the Hotel Vancouver is going to be, well, adding a 12-story office building. And I noticed that there's going to be a 5,000 square foot retail space there on Burrard Street, where there's some other luxury stores nearby.
100%. I think in the past, I would say 6 to 12 months, we've been blown away by the retail interest. And I think if I bring it all back, it's across the board. So we've had periods in time where we've had very strong interest in the luxury nodes, or the discounters, or the mainstream. Right now in Vancouver, and I say this sincerely, not just the broker nonsense that you hear from day to day and day out, it's very, very busy. Mary and I don't sleep too much because our phones are being blown up across the planet, normally by Europe in the morning and Asia in the evening. But the reality is, I think Vancouver performed incredibly well during COVID. I think people took note of that. And as a downtown core, yeah, it's across the board. Alberni Street, Robson Street, Granville Street, and then you go further afield, places like West 4th are absolutely flying. So Mary and I went to New York in late last year for a number of meetings, and in my experience in 15 years, and in his grandiose experience in I think 30 years, but I'll be careful what I say because I don't want to age him, and he looks so good. We came to the conclusion that it was the most positive we've seen in the marketplace in our collective 45 years. So, and I say that sincerely in the sense of our vacancy rate is very low. Where there is vacancy, sometimes it's there for a reason. And where there is vacancy, sometimes those are deals that are just, they take a long time. So as a whole, the story is really good. And that's kind of why I make the point of Nordstrom took us by a bit of a surprise, because everything to that point was very positive. And again, we're taking this announcement into a positive sphere, but the news itself, hey, any retailer closing that amount of square footage across Canada, it has to be seen as a negative. But here in Vancouver, yeah, weirdly, I think we'll end up with a very strong value proposition for the space.
And in the case of Vancouver, and I think that we've sort of described that already, this was not the fault of Vancouver that this Nordstrom store is closing. Nordstrom made this decision. It's a national decision. And it just happens that actually the Vancouver store was doing really, really, really well. So that's where I think the real shock came in, especially to those in Vancouver that may not have known what was going on in the rest of the country, realizing that they had this incredible Nordstrom store, which at various times throughout its history since 2015 has been the #1 Nordstrom store in the entire company. And I mean that full stop.
And that's a really important point, because so if you go into a Nordstrom store, you see the concessions. Quite frankly, you could just go through there today and go see those concessions and go, okay, they'll need a store, they'll need a store, they'll need a store. I think that there is very much the demand is going to be there, and it's a case of just computing the right solution to that issue. But it wouldn't surprise me if some of those retailers choose to then try and land on Alberni Street, but again, the space is very tight. Try and land on Robson Street, again, very, very tight with the tightest in my 11, 12 years here. And, we're going to have to come up with elegant solutions to ensure that we can rehouse some of those brands, because to your point, the store's been performing incredibly well. And we need to rehome those tenancies and those concessions and those brands that have obviously been well received in Vancouver.
Oh, absolutely. Let's get back, or let's talk a little bit about Nordstrom Rack in terms of, and this will be a fairly, I think, quick discussion. It's not necessarily an area that you're doing as much work, but in British Columbia, I think there's just one Nordstrom Rack store. It's located in Langley at, is the shops at Willowbrook, or is it Willowbrook Mall? I should get the name right. Quadreal owns it. Lovely shopping center. Quadreal is a great landlord, by the way. But that store is about, I'm going to say 35,000 square feet. I haven't looked at the exact square footage, but that's generally what they're running at. What do you see for a box like that in the suburbs? Do you have any insight into what could be done with one of those besides putting in a single tenant, maybe like Winners?
I have to be honest with you that my expertise does not lie in Langley. We have done some transactions out there, but by no means an expert. I will say that there has been incredible population growth out there, and the consumers that are out there do seem to do well. So I doubt Quadreal, with their experience and quite frankly their roster of tenancies that they have in place across Canada, I'm sure the vacancy rate was pretty low there. And as much as Nordstrom Rack was a big draw, I think they have enough tenancies that they'll be able to sustain and certainly be able to add to that mix. So yeah, not one that I would too closely monitor or provide comment on, but the short story is, I think that they'll keep calm, carry on, and re-tenant without an issue.
Oh, I feel the same way. Just having a look at those around the country, there's anything from boutique grocers to Winners to, well, Sporting Life just announced a new concept we've got in Retail Insider called Team Town Sports. They're about the same size. I was on a 6:30 Ched radio show recently, and I broke that news as well, saying this could be another tenant. So there's going to be far more options. But the larger Nordstrom boxes, which again, Vancouver is actually the largest one in the country at 230,000 square feet, that's going to take much more of a creative solution in order to re-tenant that. In the case of Vancouver, I look at that also as being the best and most valuable, I think, of all the Nordstrom stores in terms of being able to do that. It's also got, I think, the most flexibility, given that it's almost an entire city block that has 3 corners. I look at that as an incredible opportunity for redevelopment in downtown Vancouver into something that could be incredibly exciting and potentially world class.
Totally agree. I think that there was a comment, be careful what I say, but there was a comment that the old Sears was described as the urinal of Vancouver. So I'm sure comment. So it was a bit hard and a tough shell in the middle of this kind of beautiful downtown peninsula. And I think the Nordstrom obviously opened that up and it looked great. But I think the opportunity is there to open it up even more so. It's so central. It's right in the middle of everything. So, between Pacific Center and Robson Street, there is this run that hasn't really had the continuation or the contiguous flow of retail that maybe it should. And this gives a great opportunity to fix that. So overall, Vancouver's performed really well. So I don't think there's that much concern, but there really is this chance to get it really right. And again, I'm grateful that Cadillac Fairview is going to be there because they obviously, they're experts in this. So I'm sure they would have had a plan no matter what, and I'm sure they'll execute that really well.
We'll be waiting to see what happens. And of course, on Retail Insider, we'll be reporting it. Anything else you want to add, Martin, before we wrap up here today?
You just look great, Craig. So if you could try not to look so good next time. And I did just move into a new office, hence why I don't have this lovely backdrop like you.
And mine's actually even real. It's there's real stuff on the back walls. So
I want thank you. Shoes. Can I have the shoes?
You can borrow them if you want.
Sure, I'll borrow next time in Toronto. No problem.
Size 9. I don't know what size your feet are, 42 or 43, whatever that is in the European size.
Squeeze it.
Thank you so much. This is Martin Moriarty. He's a senior vice president at Marcus Millichap in Vancouver, a retail expert. He and Mario Negra's team there have done lots of retail leasing in the downtown core. Martin, we have to have you back on this segment. We need to talk about West 4th. We need to talk about some other retail things that are happening in Vancouver. I'd love to have you back on. Please do.
100%. I'd love to. There's lots to tell you about, but all in due course.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, everyone here, for watching or listening today. I'm Craig Patterson. I'm the founder, publisher, and CEO of Retail Insider Media. And this is a Retail Insider video interview. We'll be having lots more of these. Thank you so much. Take care and bye for now.